My name is Christopher Neville, and I'm the president of the Foot and Ankle SIG in AOPT. And joining me to share this FASIG author spotlight is Dr. Ruth Chimenti from Iowa. Dr. Chimenti joined her co-authors Dr. Maderick Hall, Connor Dilger, Dr. Erica Merriweather, Dr. Jason Wilkin, and Dr. Kathleen Sluka in completing a study published in JOSPT this past June titled Local Anesthetic Injection Resolves Movement Pain, Motor Dysfunction, and Pain Catastrophizing in Individuals with Chronic Achilles Tendinopathy, a non-randomized clinical trial. So joining me from FASIG here today is Dr. Megan Peach from Montana, who chairs our clinical practice committee.
Hi.
And Madison Engel, who is part of our student group from Regis University in Colorado.
Hello.
And Dr. Ruth Chimenti, thank you so much for joining us to share your insights and ideas.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to the discussion.
Good. And maybe we could start, obviously, even from the title. This is a very interesting study, and perhaps you could provide just a brief overview of the study for us.
Yeah, so what motivated the study is that about 40% of patients, when they are seeking care, which is primarily the standard of care is targeted exercise at the Achilles tendon or surgery, and so they continue to have some pain after that. So it doesn't fully eliminate their pain. And so that led me to think, okay, so maybe there are some factors within the central nervous system that are contributing to the pain or contributing to the persistence of Achilles tendinopathy pain. And so the study had two purposes. So the first purpose was to compare a group of patients with Achilles tendon pain to a group of matched controls to see what differed between the two groups in terms of central processing. And in terms of central processing, what I mean by that was we were looking at pain-related psychological factors, quantitative sensory testing to look at signs of nociplastic pain, and then we were also looking at motor function as well. And then the second aim of the study was to see how these factors changed after the application of a localized anesthetic injection to the region of pain in the Achilles tendon group. And so this was a mechanistic clinical trial and involved 46 adults. We had 23 with chronic Achilles tendon pain and 23 matched controls. And we had all of the participants do the study measures twice. And so the study measures were looking at movement-evoked pain with heel raises and a couple other activities. We used motion capture to look at their motor performance, as well as looking at how many heel raises they could do. And then we used questionnaires to look at pain-related psychological factors like pain catastrophizing and kinesiophobia. And then we also did quantitative sensory testing as one way of looking at if there were indicators of a pattern of widespread pain. And what we found was that the Achilles tendinopathy group, as you would expect, had pain with tendon loading activities. They had lower performance on the single limb heel raise. And then they also had higher pain catastrophizing and kinesiophobia than the control group. And interesting, what we found is that after we gave the Achilles tendinopathy group anesthetic injection, their movement-evoked pain was eliminated, and also their motor dysfunction with the heel raises also resolved. Interestingly, as you had mentioned, Chris, the pain catastrophizing also was essentially reduced to nothing, but the kinesiophobia still went down just a little bit, but still stayed relatively elevated. And so that's my brief summary for that.
Yes, thanks, Ruth. And following that, how about Megan? Do you have any questions?
Yeah, so in the discussion, the authors mentioned the importance of using psychologically informed physical therapy to evaluate the relationship between pain, motor dysfunction, and kinesiophobia. Ruth, can you elaborate on what this might look like clinically?
Yeah, so I know at the initial evaluation, people always have a lot of different factors to evaluate. And you have to determine, what factors are you going to prioritize in that initial evaluation. And so I think one aspect from this paper shows the importance of evaluating kinesiophobia and pain catastrophizing in a patient who has Achilles tendinopathy. And then thinking about also over time how that may change. And so if someone has maybe like a mid-range kinesiophobia, maybe at first you still go ahead and you just move forward with targeting exercise that's going to be more focused on strengthening and loading. But then over time, if the patient doesn't improve, then maybe that would be a sign of like, oh, let me now implement, focus more in terms of my patient education to see if I can, talk more about kinesiophobia and pain catastrophizing. For example, maybe this patient has an experience where they had a friend who ruptured their Achilles tendon, and so they're nervous about progressing onto towards the end range. Maybe it becomes they're more fearful once you have them start hopping or resuming their sports activities.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Thank you.
Great. And Maddie, how about any questions from you?
So to kind of continue off of that last point that you had mentioned, Ruth, I'm curious why you chose the motor tasks that you did in the paper. You had mentioned specifically patients might have concerns, particularly with kinesiophobia in this population when it comes to higher level, maybe higher intensity exercises such as running or jumping. I'm curious, how do you think patients would respond with those types of activities? And do you think that there's any room for future research in that area?
Yeah, so with designing the study, my initial concern was to make sure that I could get, with motion analysis, you want to get at least 3 representative trials that can be repeated. And so you want to choose an activity that challenges them, but doesn't challenge them so much that it's so painful that they can't replicate it. You can't ask them to do it multiple times over and over. And so the walking task was, so we did stair ascent, where they're walking at a standardized pace and they ascend the stairs. And so that was a task that challenged them just a little bit more than walking. And so we used that task to look at the ankle plantar flexor function. And that was a nice, reliable task, but showed, I think it wasn't quite challenging enough. So we found no differences between the Achilles tendinopathy group and the matched controls. So it wasn't until we made it a little bit harder with the heel raises that you then see that impaired plantar flexor performance in the Achilles tendinopathy group. And so one limitation of that, though, is that I am curious, like, what would have been the facts if I had looked at single limb hopping or something like that? And that's a limitation of the study, is that I don't know if those higher level tasks would have resolved with just an anesthetic injection. The problem, though, from just a research standpoint is, because I know right now I have an ongoing study, and I don't know, maybe roughly a third of people at evaluation 1, maybe even higher, a third to 50%, like, are not doing a single limb hop at the baseline evaluation. So it's hard to be able to track the improved performance over time. So you can look at the movement evoked pain and try to go through, but yeah, that's part of the challenge, is to try to get those high level tasks that's applicable to everyone. And Achilles tendinopathy is challenging because the population in terms of their activity level is so diverse, because we will get like these really high level athletes, and then we'll also get these people that are like, the reason they got Achilles tendinopathy is because they were trying to start a walking program to lose weight. And so these two wide ranges of the spectrum can be hard to accommodate with just a small selection of tasks.
Definitely. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Ruth, for sharing your insight and ideas about this study. I think it was obviously a really interesting study that I think is going to gain a lot of attention as it's out there a little while. So so thank you for your time. Thank you, Megan and Maddie, for posing some questions. Thanks everyone for your time during this discussion.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Nice talking.
Thank you.